Hi. This Shabbat is referred to as Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of consolation. For the next 7 weeks, we will read special Haftorot from the book of Isaiah, the end of Isaiah. And these Haftorot are filled with hope, encouragement, and inspiration towards the future. We have just experienced Tisha B'Av, for 25 hours reliving the tragedies of all that day represents, from the sin of the spies in the desert, through the destruction of 2 temples, and throughout the 2,000 years of tragedy and struggles which have passed over the heads of our people. And now the time has come to console ourselves. All the commentaries are sensitive to the fact that our Haftorah begins with the words Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. The Torah, the prophets are so sparse with their words, and yet they double this term, Nachamu. Be consoled, my people. What is that all about? How does the Nechama, the consolation of Jerusalem, differ from all other consolations? That it can only be expressed as a double expression. So let us adumbrate the mechanics of normal, regular consolation, which we refer to in our tradition as Nichem Avelim, or more colloquially, a Shiva call. And by looking at that, we may aid in our understanding and arrive at a solution of our query. When someone grieves over a personal loss, nicht uns gedacht, we shouldn't know, the public, we realize that we can never fully comfort that mourner, save by only one true consolation, by causing the dearly departed to walk right through the door. Of course, we know, and the mourner knows better than anyone else, that this is an impossibility. So what can we do? What can we say? Many people are at a loss of words when it comes to offering consolation. Well, the first thing we should do is, to the best of our ability, empathize with the mourner. Perhaps we too have experienced tragedy, and to express that. But being very careful about it, though. We must at the same time emphasize that we realize that our friend who is grieving, that his or her mourning is unique to that mourner alone, to that person alone. That is, to acknowledge that we can never truly understand what that mourner is going through. The most we can do is listen to them and stay with them. Be in their 4 L's. Perhaps we can express something along the lines of the great President Abraham Lincoln, who in a famous letter to a Mrs. Bixby, who lost 5 sons fighting for the Union Army during the Civil War, Lincoln writes, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming." Another thing, though, that we must try to come across as we speak to the mourner is we must impress upon the mourner that we as Jews uphold the belief in resurrection and with perfect faith. Indeed, it is the 13th of the 13 principles and foundations of our faith. We claim the emunah that we hope that the mourner will one day achieve that true consolation through Tchiyat HaMeitim, the resurrection of the dead. But if that is a far, far off dream, we can still proclaim what the prophet Isaiah tells us in the Haftorah: Kol koreh bamidbar panu derech Hashem yashru ba'arava misilah le'Elokeinu. Let every valley be raised, every hill and mountain made low. Let the rugged ground become level, and the ridges become a plain. Right now, the mourner's life is filled with scraggly mountains and peaks of sadness, of tragedy that he is forced to traverse. But Hashem promises us that all those mountains will one day be made straight, and normalcy will once again reign. If this is the practice when it comes to personal mourning and consolation, tanchumin, how much more so can we apply this to our nation as a whole? You see, we too are mourning. We are mourning the loss of the temple. But how fortunate we are at the same time that we live in a generation of almost double consolation. After witnessing the catastrophe of the Holocaust, our generation were consoled in a small measure with the creation of the State of Israel from its very humble beginnings as a fragile young country. And we have witnessed it grow to a first-rate nation on the international stage, a first among equals. And yet, at the same time, we realize that we cannot experience true peace, true consolation, so long as anti-Semitism, that ugly, unprecedented scourge in the annals of human history, that afflicts the world like an incurable disease, like a pandemic, so long as it still flourishes on the face of the earth, there is no true peace. That second consolation is yet to be, when anti-Semitism is finally vanquished forever. So the Navi, Isaiah, the prophet, comforts us with a double comfort. Just as the state of Israel came into being almost overnight, in the blink of an eye, so too anti-Semitism will disappear with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And in the meantime, our faith, our belief will still comfort us even now. May we be worthy of Mashiach b'mheira b'yameinu.